Hey y'all, welcome. Welcome back to my channel if you're returning, and welcome to all the new people joining as well. My name is Marissa Price. I am a social worker, healer, mental health educator, business educator. And yeah, I'm so glad you're here. Joined us for this very important discussion on preventing burnout and also repairing our relationship with rest, which I know a lot of us are going through. Like as we enter the fall months, our bodies start to slow down, but we're having these increased demands on our energy a lot. So I know that a lot of us are going through this, which is why I'm so grateful for my guest here today, Ashley Rankin, who is the co founder of Rest to Reset. And Rest to Reset is an anti hustle, anti grind, burnout disruptor, healing incubator, and online rest portal. The mission is to support 1,000 high achieving women and men by 2025 to repair their relationship with rest through mindset coaching, simple tools, and community support. And this is the brainchild of Ashley Rankin and Courtney Skipper. So, with that, I'll pass it over to Ashley to introduce herself and talk about her channel and anything else.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you, Marissa, for having me on. I'm so excited to connect with your audience and speak about this very important topic, burnout and burnout recovery. And I appreciate you sharing that you're a burnout survivor and you're right
Yes.
there under your name. So can absolutely relate to that. I do want to start with gratitude to you, Marissa, first for taking the time to have me on your platform. And secondly, and more importantly, just for the community that you've built here, for the awareness, the language, the validation that you have not only provided to me as someone in active burnout recovery, but also to, I know a lot of women, a lot of Black women that may have felt isolated, may have felt that they were the only one experiencing burnout or toxic jobs,
Right.
and just creating a safe healing platform for us to connect and heal collectively.
Oh, thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yes, yes. And wonderful job at the Exodus Summit as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, if y'all were not there, so Exodus Summit is an online summit for Black women looking to take a career break, take a sabbatical, or move abroad. And I spoke there with my good friend Angela, who's also a social worker, and we talked about being over prepared versus underprepared when traveling abroad. And yeah, it was an amazing session. And I did share, like, as someone with anxiety, right, it's not always the easiest thing for me to speak publicly. But just being in like a supportive community is so helpful, to get over those fears. So yeah, thank you. Thank you. I had fun speaking.
And to piggyback on that, just to
Yeah.
add something, so thank you. I would be amiss if I didn't acknowledge Dr. Kamani because I
Yes.
found you through her, just Googling on YouTube, typing in toxic jobs and Black women. And so thank you, Dr. Kamani. And also thank you for being transparent about the anxiety that you experience and
Yeah.
how you manage that and how you still get on and put your best face forward and do good work in the world. I've like adopted this mantra that I'm doing things in excellence and not in perfection.
Ooh, I love that. Ooh,
Yes. And
okay.
that's something that I have to affirm to myself every day because I have a tendency to want to make things perfect, and
Yes.
perfection is the enemy of progress. So excellence and not perfection. And so I appreciate you just
Ooh.
sharing about your human experience and how you're still moving ahead.
Mm, that is so important. Ooh, excellence over perfection. I love that. Because, yes, as a recovering perfectionist, right, growing up in these systems, growing up in these school systems where we have to strive to be perfect all the time, and there's that constant pressure on us, especially as Black women,
Mhm.
it's like unlearning perfectionism, just that can be pivotal in healing and, finding your true self and allowing yourself to be human instead of like a robot all the time. So that's, ooh, I love that. I did want to ask you just to start off with, what is burnout for people who don't even, really know what that means? We
Mhm.
see it floating around a lot, and a lot of us, may feel the symptoms of burnout,
Mhm.
or we think is burnout. But I would love to hear from you. What is burnout?
Absolutely. So, just a simple definition is um, emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion that is caused by prolonged stress. And oftentimes we can differentiate between burnout and just being really tired or even exhausted with normally like resting and sleeping and our coping mechanisms that we all may have, like yoga or exercise or community. Like if those things in themselves are not helping us to repair, then we may be experiencing burnout. And I know that that was my personal experience. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
hey, that's my cousin. That's cool. Hey, Brian, thanks. That's awesome. So that's how, in my, and I'm sure we'll get more into, my personal experience with burnout, but that's how I knew that I was really experiencing burnout versus just being really tired because I couldn't sleep enough. I couldn't exercise enough. Yoga wasn't helping. And so I knew that it was more than just being very tired or even exhausted.
Right, right. I did notice a comment. Does my mic sound okay to you? Is it kind of like
Um,
crinkly a little bit?
it's fine on my end.
Okay, okay. I just want to make sure because I did have some mic issues at Exodus Summit too. So, okay. Just want to make sure. And thank you for that comment as well. Hopefully it sounds clear. If not, you can just leave another comment in the chat and I'll try to sort it out. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I did want to ask about signs we should look. Oh, it's better. Okay. Some signs we should look out for when it comes to burnout for those of us who may just, a response to stress sometimes as Black women is just keep going further into the work, keep pushing ourselves. So, what are some signs we should look out for, that may the red flags for burnout before we get too deep into it?
Absolutely. So signs are, it's like an imbalance of homeostasis, just like our natural balance. So the tricky thing or kind of the insidious thing about burnout is that it doesn't start out as a body slam oftentimes. It's so you may be sleeping too much, you may be sleeping a little bit too much, or not getting the necessarily the amount of sleep that you need, but it may not be as obvious in the beginning. So just disruptions in sleep. There may be weight gain or weight loss, isolation from your community.
Yeah.
If you naturally have, strong relationships with family and friends and coworkers, and you find yourself pulling back from those relationships in a way that is not natural to you, that may be an indicator that you're starting to experience burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say just general kind of modification of your natural behaviors. So again, just in sleeping, it could be in weight gain or loss, eating too much, eating too little, and then the community element is important. Just in terms of if you find yourself isolating, then you may want to take a deeper
Right.
look into those things. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are helpful. Those are helpful. And I did want to ask, I think your program is aimed towards like high achieving people as well. And I know that for a lot of us, like I said, we'll just keep going further and further into the work. We'll feel like something is wrong with us. We'll internalize those feelings of exhaustion, of being isolated. We'll internalize those as something is wrong with us. So we need to go further into whatever we're doing. So I wanted to ask, are there certain risk factors that you have identified that make certain populations more susceptible to burnout than others?
That's an excellent question. Thank you, Marissa.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So coming from marginalized communities, my sister, she corrects me and she tells me not to refer to myself as a minority, but as a melanated person. So coming from marginalized communities, of course, we're often we're bred to be twice. We're told that we have to be twice as good in whatever it is we do, and we internalize that programming from a young age, and that's not possible. It's not possible for a human being to be twice as good. It is, to an extent, but then we hit a wall, we hit a breaking point.
Right.
And so my personal experience and just many of the people that I'm in relationship with, which of course are other Black women, I see that the burnout, once it's detected, it's often extreme, unfortunately, because we
Mhm.
don't give ourselves permission to, and oftentimes we really don't have permission to fully and authentically show up as ourselves in the workplace and in other spaces. And so, we tell ourselves that we always have to keep everything together, that we're not permitted to be fully human. And so by
Yes.
the time our burnout is detected or it, and I'm going to just pause for a moment. It also shows
Mhm.
up differently in Black people in terms of having anxiety or depression. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
we've been socialized as well to mask that. And so we may feel depression, may feel anxiety, but it's coming out as irritation, aggravation. And so it just kicks the can down the road in terms of like getting like a proper diagnosis in
Mhm.
a timely manner. So did I answer your
Yeah, you
question?
did. You did. Thank you. That was very helpful. Yes. And I did want to kind of pivot off of that. What are some of the long-term consequences of burnout? Because like you said, some of us will just ignore. We may not even realize what's happening to us. And even if we do go to like a clinician or a therapist or something, they may not even recognize that we're experiencing
Mhm.
symptoms of burnout, anxiety, or depression because our symptoms may present differently sometimes as Black people,
Mhm.
especially as Black women. So the long-term consequences of burnout, if you could speak to that at all.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when we think about that imbalance that introduces itself as like lack of sleep or disruption of our sleep in either direction, disruption of our appetite, disruption of our exercise and our community, just the compounding effects of that can absolutely be very severe in terms of impacts on our health,
Yeah.
um, weight gain, weight loss, and even the someone who may have a disposition or someone that's more likely to, if there's mental illness, like let's say that runs in your family, that long-term burnout
Mhm.
that's not being properly managed could manifest itself into an actual mental illness.
Yeah.
And so, of course, disruption and loss of important relationships and an overall disruption and lower quality of life.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for that. I just want to read this comment right here. Crystal. So true. My burnout is done out of anxiety. It's like trying to control the economy. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's true. That's true. Yep. And a lot of, the mental health issues that we experience can lead us down a path of burnout too, because there's not space for us to rest. Like the systems that we live in create a lot of these issues. And then we're also, the pressure on us is to keep going all the time. And that
Mhm.
exacerbates the issues that we have. So
Absolutely.
that's real. That's
Mhm.
real. I did want to talk about the negative internalized messaging around rest, which
Mhm.
Rest to Reset kind of talks about. So I wanted to ask if you could share a little bit about what this messaging may sound like inside of us when it comes to dealing with burnout, but having like the negative talk around rest inside of us.
Absolutely. It may sound like, and I believe many of the those watching have heard things like you have to be twice as good. You
Yeah.
can't let them see you sweat. Um, your even that your parent or your grandparent or some ancestor, when we're talking about marginalized communities, that they have worked so hard and that they've sacrificed to put us in a position to win and to strive. Those are just a few things off the top, that you can sleep when you
Mhm.
die.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So
Ooh,
internalizing those messages really is harmful to us,
it
short
is.
term
Very,
and certainly long term.
very. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess. So pivoting to resilience,
Mhm.
one of the other themes. If you could talk about how we can, build resilience and how resilience may even help stave off some of those symptoms of burnout that we may experience.
Yes. So, in terms of resilience, resilience is the ability to experience difficult situations, and have those difficult experiences and to come out better.
Right.
Um, it's, I, for a long time, had a misunderstanding of resilience and misapplied it in my life, meaning that I interpreted resilience as how much I'm healing, I'm getting better, Marissa. But just like thinking back through um, various experiences, like how much abuse I could take, or how
Mhm.
strong I was, how resilient I was in terms of allowing myself to remain in situations that at the time I didn't realize, but they were incredibly harmful.
Mhm.
And the dynamics of those situations really sought to fracture me
Yes.
and
Mhm.
impair me in a way that was absolutely not safe to remain in. But
Mhm.
in my misunderstanding and misapplication of resilience, like I'm going to show them that, oh, this is another thing that we often have heard. Oh, don't let them run you off that good job.
Oh, yes.
Don't
That
let
was
them
me.
win.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So that was my misapplication of resilience in that way, and thus burnout. And we're here, right? The repair
Yeah.
and the conversation that we're having. But so resilience again is being able to experience difficult things and come back better. To not remain in situations either with people, places, or things that truly do not have your best interest in mind. And and there was a second part to your question.
And how resilience can help maybe stave off some of those symptoms of burnout that we may experience.
Thank you. Yes. So
Mhm.
resilience, if you think about it as I like to say, small steps, great distances.
Ooh, I
And
love
that
that.
resilience is really built into each day. And so it's the
Mhm.
small things that we do well every day that start to compound and help to make us more resilient and stronger against burnout. Like, I'm disciplined in making sure that that I stay hydrated, that I
Right.
drink enough water each day, that I exercise, even if it's general exercise, several times a week, that I remain in community and in connection with my loved ones.
Mhm.
These are things that help to build our resilience. And of course, in active burnout or in severe burnout, unfortunately, those micro resiliences really can get challenged. And then that's where our burnout gets worse because we're not drinking water, we're not talking to loved ones, we're not exercising, we're
Mm.
not sleeping well.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
it's a skill to learn
Mhm.
how to continue to first of all, the awareness and then the protection around the things that keep us resilient, and recognizing that if we're in relationship, personal or professional relationship, or in environments that are really starting to chip away at those foundational resilience blocks,
Mhm.
that we really need to pause and ask good questions and reflect on if if those are spaces that we should remain in.
Mm. Mm. That's crucial. That's
Mhm.
crucial. Yeah. Because a lot of us are taught we just have to stay. We just have to stick it out. Like no matter no matter how we're feeling, how it's impacting us, we just have to stay. So that's important. Ask good questions. Yes. I love that. I did want to ask you about the term radical self care, which I've seen in Rest to Reset's materials. I wanted to ask you, what does that mean, radical self care? A lot of us, self care, even the term, is kind of new to us, putting ourselves first, putting what we need ahead of other people. Um, so, what is radical self care for those who that may be a new term too?
Yes. So I'm taking on Dr. Fernita Ware's lane here, but I think she'll be graceful and I'll give my interpretation. Dr. Fernita Ware is one of our Rest to Reset coaches. And she actually has a program called Radical Self-Care. And she leads cohorts through really, again, when we talk about resilience. And sometimes when we hear about self-care, we think of more superficial self-care, like I'm getting my hair done, I'm taking a bath, I'm getting my nails done. All those things are excellent, but they're more maintenance activities. And so radical self-care, from my understanding of Dr. Ware's work, is really that resilience building from the
Mhm.
inside. And so it's challenging, and it's really asking, like, where did the voices in my head that are telling me that I don't have permission to rest, that I can't rest, that I'm not worthy of rest, where is that coming from? Who's saying that? And doing the deep work to challenge that internal conversation, and then also the restorative practices. Dr. Ware, she shared, actually, we were recently published in Affirm magazine on 3 ways to prevent burnout. And Dr. Ware shared 3 strategies for that resilience building, that radical self-care, which included um, grounding. So, like going
Mhm.
outside, taking your shoes off, connecting with the earth, sunshine,
Mhm.
because that helps to give us vitamin D, and just helps us to repair from the inside out. And there's a third one. It will come back to me. Mindful breathing. Thank you. Mindful breathing, because oftentimes in our hurried and rushed lives, we will practice shallow breathing. We'll even hold our breath. I know that I have been guilty
Ooh.
of that, and I've really had to
Mhm.
work on not holding my breath when I feel anxious, because it helps reoxygenate the body and the brain and just keeps
Yeah.
us present. And these things are so simple, but they absolutely become neglected over time in many people that are experiencing burnout. So I think Dr. Ware would give me a pass in that description of radical self care, but it's really the things that we need to do that at one time were very innate to us as humans,
Yeah. Yeah.
the breathing, the sunshine, the grounding, that have we've become untethered from, and that we need to reincorporate into our daily lives to be well for the long term.
Mm, that's key. That's key. Thank you. I did see the comment about my mic, so I scooted it away from me. So hopefully that's better. I've been having mic issues lately, y'all. But thank you for that comment too. I did want to ask about Rest to Reset, your program that you co-founded, and what it encompasses for people who may be new to Rest to Reset.
Yes, thank you.
Mhm.
So in February, Rest to Reset, and shout out to my co-host, my co-founder, Courtney Skipper, if she's on. But we had our first, we are calling, excuse me, our masterclass on rest. And it was a 3-day program where we explored, again, like the internal conversations and also the systemic barriers that Black people have experienced around rest, and as to why perhaps we don't rest well or can't rest well, exploring that and an exploration of that. That was Dr. Ware. On day 2, we had Courtney Skipper. And as a performance coach, she led us through and coached us in terms of when we think about resting as a skill
Mhm.
can be developed. So how do we know, what are our red flags? What are our green flags? How do we know that we're getting better or where we're stagnating? And what are the metrics toward actual improvement in the body of rest? And then on day 3, we had Tyrone Beverly, who's a yoga coach, and just an incredible person. And it was like this amazing discussion about imagination, which we talked
Mm.
about, earlier, and
Yeah.
just what can a well-rested life look like? How does it feel? What is the feeling tone of that life? And we had some discussion around what our ancestors recognize, like our energetic profiles now, if they were to come back and see
Ooh,
us in these states of burnout, would they recognize us? Um,
that's
so it was a very
powerful.
powerful conversation. It was.
Yeah.
It
Ooh.
was. And I would be a Miss Antonia Rashida. She also provided us with some wonderful and amazing affirmations, which we led each day with to support that reprogramming around rest. So that was our master class. And as we, continue to develop our programming, we've listened to the feedback, and we've heard that people want more time. They want time for like live Q&A, and of course a more personalized experience. And so that's why we are offering the self-care planning live in November. So we're going to hop on Zoom, and it will be co-hosted by Courtney and I, and we're going to come in, and you all will leave with a personalized self-care plan. So there it is.
That. And it's on Saturday, November 4th. Is that right?
That's correct.
The self-care planning. Okay.
That's,
And that is linked in the description as well, if y'all would like to sign up for that. Because I think, like we talked about before, like having a plan, having a self-care plan, something that you can go back to once you feel kind of those initial symptoms start to pop up, is powerful. Yeah, it is. And I see a comment here. Let me see. Soul Inspired. Soul Inspired says, "Hi, everyone. I'm going to jump in. Laid off work due to a toxic work environment coupled with burnout and anxiety, worrying about money afterwards. Yeah. I had resilience to a fault and misaligned in my jobs. I suck it out no matter what." First of all, thank you for sharing that. I know that a lot of people can resonate with that. And yeah, that's real. Having resilience to a fault, right? Just kind of pushing forward and ignoring all of your body's signals that is trying to tell you that something's off, something's wrong in this environment. But we're often conditioned so often to stay. And that was one of the things we were talking about with imagination, right? Oppressive systems rob us of our imagination, of our ability to dream of something different than what we're currently in. So I do want to ask, like, how can rest help us kind of reclaim that imagination, reclaim our dream space, as Trisha Hersey says?
Yes. Resting, sleeping, and repairing are all times and opportunities for our brains to process life and our experiences, for our brains and our bodies to repair, for our brains and our bodies to imagine that there's a margin and a separation that rest provides us. There's a protection there that allows us to renew. Like literally, rest helps us to renew our cells and our brain cells. And when we're operating in burnout, when we're operating in exhaustion, it really reduces our bandwidth for our creativity, our problem solving skills, and our ability to really come up with constructive solutions. And so it's so important for us to build that space in, to have that private time, to imagine and to create. And just because everything starts with a thought.
Right.
Everything in existence came through, at one point, a thought, which became an action, which became another action. And then that's how we create and bring things into existence. And I would offer that for those of us that are feeling really strapped for time and not able to book the amounts of time that you would like to rest, that there are ways, small steps, great distances, that you can build in micro rest in your day. And it could literally be with just 5 minutes in the morning or on your lunch break or in the evening. And if you could just start with just those micro spaces around rest and protect that 5 minutes, connect with that 5 minutes, honor that 5 minutes, and in time, the benefits of that will grow.
I love that. So start small, right? You can start small with, like you said, 5 minutes, but those 5 minutes are yours and no one else's. Yours to prioritize yourself, focus on your self care so that you can proactively prevent burnout before it starts. I love that. I did want to read a comment from Courtney. Yeah, Courtney Skipper. She says, so true. Self care is really about the whole person. Our mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well being are a part of self care too. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I did want to ask about boundaries.
Mhm.
Boundaries are something that are relatively new to me in the past few years, just the concept of having boundaries and
Mhm.
establishing them. So I wanted to ask you, what role do boundaries play in preventing burnout? And also, when we think about us violating our own boundaries in a lot of
Mhm.
these toxic workplaces, toxic environments, how can that lead to burnout? So how can they both prevent burnout, I guess, and how would the lack of boundaries might cause burnout potentially?
Yes, I'm glad. Thank you for sharing in terms of the lack of boundaries with self, because
Yeah,
I know that that's certainly how I've gotten what has helped to contribute to my burnout.
me too.
Where the lack of boundaries, yes, that
Hmm.
I have had with myself. And actually, at the Exodus Summit this past weekend, I heard one of the presenters talk about how boundaries are oftentimes we think of them as there for other people,
Yeah,
but they're for ourselves. And I thought, that makes a lot of sense, because in the past I know I've thought I'm going to set this boundary with, you know, whatever, this friend or this coworker. But then when the boundary is broken, it's like really just what is that next step of, well, how are you going to respond? You know,
yeah,
so really kind of in reframing it about it's not so much about the other person, but about what my response will be
right.
when boundary is broken is helpful. So to your question, having boundaries in place, of course, where they say like tall fences or good fences keep good neighbors or something like that.
Yeah.
They help to protect our energy,
They do.
our time. They help us to really prioritize the things that we want to say yes to instead of more so
Mm.
spending
Mhm.
wasting times on things that we wish we would have said no to. Um, and then the reverse of that question in terms of when we don't have proper boundaries, um,
Yeah.
really just a violation of, I think, our highest selves, of our
Mhm.
ability to progress.
Yeah.
Um, we can, but boundary setting is also a skill that can be developed. I've felt intimidated by setting boundaries in the past,
Mhm. Me too.
um, particularly being like known as a very kind person, a very friendly person. I've felt intimidated with developing the skill of boundary setting, but it is something that can be worked on. Um, and I guess we could. I don't want to go too far down. I guess that topic, unless you'd like to talk more about it. But
I
for
would love to. I
feel
would
discouraged.
just for me. Yeah. Yeah. Because that's something I also struggle with is boundaries, right? And like you said, like my therapist was the one who told me about personal boundaries. So boundaries are meant to protect you because often we feel like, especially as people who are kind of conflict avoidant, it'll
Mhm.
feel very difficult to like view boundaries as you telling someone what to do, what not to do. But it's
Mhm.
really protecting yourself, it's protecting your energy. So yeah, anything you would like to share on that, please, because I
Mhm.
know a lot of us struggle with creating boundaries.
I know, like in my burnout recovery, that I ask myself now, and we can all think about, our experiences. If I hope everyone on here has not experienced burnout, but if you have, just the person that just being devitalized, being stripped of your energy, being stripped of um, I feel at times that my autonomy was stripped. And so I remind myself of the things that I don't want to feel in the future and how my mental health, how my physical health, how my spiritual health, health was compromised in not being clear, either not being clear about a boundary or not, I don't want to say, you know what, lacking the self-worth to enforce it. Because I've had to also do work around, I've had, mm, um, excuse me, the word will come back to me. Uh,
Yeah.
I've operated in high self-efficacy and low
Yeah.
self-worth,
Yeah.
and
Ooh.
that has really fueled a lot of my poor boundaries in the past. And I'm really exploring and asking myself those important questions. Um, why do I feel like I'm so good at this skill or at this task, but there was still like this level or this unworthiness that I needed to unpack. And
Mm-hmm.
doing that work also supports proper boundary settings. It helps, I know, working with my therapist has helped support me to develop that skill. Again, it's a skill that can be developed.
Mm-hmm.
And remaining in relationship with people that respect your boundaries and don't
Ooh.
push
That
them
part.
ways.
Yeah.
Yes, and don't challenge your boundaries in ways where they're dismissive or unable or unwilling to understand why it is that you've set those boundaries really helps as well, because maybe there are just some people and some spaces we don't need to be in.
Ooh. Ashley, yes, that's true. That is so true. Yeah, because a lot of these, like when it comes to like toxic work environments, even if we do try to set a boundary, which I did in the work environment that I left, it wasn't received well. So what does that tell us? Going forward, we can't do it. Going forward, we're going to be met with hostility, and that creates a lot of internalized shame and guilt around doing something that's just protecting ourselves. So that's true. That's key.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
environments are you in? Mm-hmm.
And thank you for sharing that, because I've had the exact same experience in another
Mm-hmm.
work environment in terms of reasonably setting boundaries, knowing that I've done it
Yeah. Yeah.
thoughtfully, that I've done it tactfully.
Yeah.
And there's back to that sense of autonomy. Unfortunately, I feel like it is like attacked in Black people at times in the workplace, where you can't set that boundary with me. You don't
Mm-hmm.
have the right to do that. You don't have the ability to set that line with me, even when it's
Mm-hmm.
completely about ourselves. And so
Yeah.
that's something that we really, as well, need to listen to and honor, because in that case, we can't make that dynamic better. And that's
Mm.
that we really need to consider. Of course, there are things that happen in the workplace that are uncomfortable, right? But when it's you you're consistently experiencing people like toe tapping on a boundary or right over it, and you're seeing that your peers and your supervisors are not um, honoring and like helping you to enforce reasonable personal boundaries at work. I
Yeah.
absolutely felt that as one of very few Black females in a
Mm-hmm.
competitive work place.
Oh.
So there
Yeah.
was just gaslighting, and there was a lot of other negative behavior around that.
Yeah.
So it could be an indicator that it's time to pivot.
Mm. That's so key. And thank you for sharing that. I know a lot of us can relate to that. I certainly can. Um, but I do want to bring out something you said, that radical acceptance about no, this environment is toxic.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us will go down the path of gaslighting ourselves, and internalizing everything that we're receiving as something is wrong with us. And that can lead to burnout, anxiety, depression, because we're taking that on when really it's, I know from pet to threat, that concept of what Black women experience in the workplace all the time, coming in being viewed as a pet in people's eyes, and then transitioning very quickly sometimes to being a threat. And it's confusing,
Mm-hmm.
and it can just be so disillusioning, right? Um, so yeah, that's key. That's key. That radical acceptance that no, it is the environment. It is the environment. It's
Absolutely.
not you. Hmm. Yeah.
We'll end up. No, go ahead. I didn't mean to.
Oh no, no, you're fine. Please.
When we fail to recognize
Mhm.
that it is the environment, that the environment is not getting better, and that if we're not, and when again we talk about like the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, like attacks and the
Mhm.
ailments that come out of that type of stress, of the boundary pushing and the disrespect for personal boundaries,
Mhm.
and it very much so again can manifest into physical and mental illness in the long term. Or
Yeah.
and just the fracturing of our spirit in a
Yeah.
way that it's not right, and
Mhm.
um, just to give ourselves that additional option that we may not have been empowered with growing up or socialized with. Like, no, I can leave and life can look differently, and I will have to figure it out, but I'm smart, I'm resourceful, and I can find the resources to make a pivot. Like, I don't have to remain in this fracturing environment.
Mm. Mm. That's powerful. Spirit fracturing.
Mhm,
A lot of these environments do, intentionally attempt to fracture our spirits
mhm,
because we come in with all of this knowledge, all of these gifts,
mhm.
all this education, right? Black women are the most educated group of people in the US. We come in with all of these skills that we're told that we have to have, and then all of a sudden we're being viewed as a threat when we exercise those skills and people's insecurities get triggered. Um, so, whew,
Yeah, very much so. And exceptionalism is what places many of us as Black women. I know that we probably have some
yeah,
men on here as well, but that being the one and the only, unfortunately, or just always striving, puts us in these very competitive work environments, which maybe on paper look and sound great, but that same exceptionalism that got us into these positions is a very trait that is often exploited within us and brings us harm. And I would say that now this is Ashley talking, not Rest to Reset.
yeah,
But
mhm,
I believe like at a certain um, that we as in Black women are
mhm,
oftentimes socialized like, and we're misinformed because we believe that at a certain level of education, certain level of experience, that we have arrived and that there will be a certain degree of peace, that there will be a certain degree of being understood, a certain degree of being validated once we have gotten and worked our way up to a certain point. And that is very dangerous because then we get into these spaces where, but I have all this education, I have all this experience, I'm exceptional in whatever way. And we can find ourselves isolated,
mhm,
only one, and
yeah,
there be no one in that environment to help. And
right,
it's a very dangerous space to be in. And so just to always keep that, maybe that door unlatched in the back, and just whatever type of space that we exist in, to know like I can always
mhm.
pivot out of this.
Mm, that, yeah, that's key. That's key. Like going into these workplaces already with an exit plan, I
That
think
part.
is, yeah, it's key because I didn't even know that. And I know a lot of us don't know that we're like you said, we get all these education, we get all these degrees that put us on this path that we think is going to be, just we're finally going to be respected, right? Because that's what a lot of us are going towards, just the respect that we deserve. But that respect is inherent, right? Um, so that's key. That's key. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you.
And if I could add something else to that,
Please. Yeah.
oftentimes we never even consider, you know, we never even consider that with all of the hard work, with all of the training, with all of the education, that we could get in these spaces and be invalidated and be really in some dangerous
Yeah.
territory. Just we don't even consider it. So there's no exit plan, there's no exit strategy, and it really is just it's very traumatic and it's shocking
Very.
to the psyche, to the spirit. And
Mhm.
so to keep that door unlatched, always in the back of your mind, like I can always
Mm.
exit, because oftentimes, unfortunately, we get body slammed.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah. The daggers come out when you least expect them,
Hmm.
right? And I think the more of us who are sharing our stories about what we've experienced, hopefully more people can realize and be prepared for what is to come.
Hmm.
Because a lot of these workplaces, they follow a cycle, they follow a pattern. So if
Hmm.
you can be prepared for the next step of what an abuser is going to do, it's like, okay, you
Hmm.
at least you have a plan. At least you have an exit plan, and that's key. Yeah. I did want to share a comment from Colette. Hey, Colette. She said, "Thank you for having this conversation. After I left a toxic job, I rested for 1 year. I did absolutely nothing but ate, slept, and got to know me outside of the roles that I played at work." I love that. I love that. And yeah, a lot of us coming out of these toxic environments, we just need sleep. A lot of the times, our bodies are recovering from the trauma of being gaslighted, of being, just abused in these workplaces. And we just need time to recover from that physically. Yeah. Okay. Thank y'all so much for your comments. I appreciate them. Before we start to wrap up, I did want to touch on one thing you mentioned about boundaries being a skill that we can develop.
Hmm.
Because a lot of us may feel like if we are, let's say, introverts, like I am, if we are more on the quiet side, more on the reserved side, that we don't even have the power to establish boundaries. Um, but I would love to hear more about how building boundaries can be a skill set that you can develop and cultivate over time. If you'd like to share anything about that.
Absolutely. I would offer that when we're in connection with our bodies, that oftentimes gives us that like basal level, or that base level of boundaries that we may have been socialized for whatever reason over time, to dishonor, to disrupt, to push down. And so developing language, in terms of our feelings beyond I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm mad or pissed off, really like developing additional language and really coming into connection with our bodies around how it feels within us when things happen. Like one person, it might be like heat rising in the chest,
Yeah.
when anger, because the toe tapping on the boundaries and the disregard there, or it may be a numbness in the face, or a
Right.
tingling coming up the arms, that we're disconnected with. And we can literally just, if you're thinking right now, if I were to ask you or pose a question like, how does anger feel in your body versus
Mhm.
sadness versus embarrassment and shame, and you're
Mhm.
saying like, well, I'm not sure, just simply get a journal or take out your phone, and the next time something happens to you that feels shameful or that feels invalidating or that angers you, just the various scopes of emotions, just put in your phone how it feels, or write
Mhm.
it down, because you'll start to see a pattern if you just track that, and it
Mhm.
will help, the individual come into connection with themselves to identify like, okay, this feeling is actually, this is my body telling me a boundary has been crossed. And I would also offer, that we have to learn, and when we talk about imagination, kind of in like life looking a different way, to prioritize our peace over things looking impressive on paper,
Ooh,
because
that's
that's
pivotal.
also, yes,
Mhm.
that's where a lot of boundary
Ooh.
violations occur as well. Because I know I position myself, well, I'm in this role and with this title, and it looks so good, and I'm getting so many claps and pats on the back, and I'm proud of you, and I'm impressed, and I'm not going to let them, you know, uh, run me off this good job, or what will people think, or whatever. And so it's just like all this crap that doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
Where I just knew, like, Marissa, just here, I'm like pointing like right under here.
Mm-hmm.
My peace was disrupted.
Ooh.
Absolutely. I would come in, and for me, it would be anxiety before going into work, anxiety during the workday, anxiety at the end of the workday. Um, and again, when we talk about those micro resiliences, my habits just were totally disrupted. I'm normally consistent in my exercise. I'm thoughtful about my meal planning. I stay hydrated. Like everything was jacked up.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Yep.
Everything was just, it was awful.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very
Yeah.
dark time.
Yeah.
And that was just a complete disruption of my peace and thinking about what was on paper. And so, again, um, the boundaries are telling us, our bodies, our minds, our spirits are telling us what they need. But sometimes we just have to let the dust settle and
Mm-hmm.
reflect and really connect with how we feel.
Mm. That's key. That's key. Keeping a log. I know one of the pieces of advice I gave is voice notes. For
Mhm.
those of us who maybe, journaling may not be our thing, writing may not be our thing, you can always keep voice notes. Anything that allows you to have that proof of what you
Mhm.
felt in that moment so that you can go back and study the pattern and realize the pattern. Oh, this when I interacted with this person, this is the feeling that came up. So the more that you can kind of put those puzzle pieces together, like, oh, maybe
Mhm.
I don't need to be around that person anymore because they keep making me feel this way.
Mhm.
I think that's key. That's such great advice.
It
Yeah.
absolutely is. Yep. And then when the gaslighting comes in later, like, no, this
Mm.
happened on this date at this time, and I know what happened, and I'm not going to talk myself out of it because the group wants to do a bullying body slam against one
Yeah.
person because of some negative work culture.
Yeah. Ooh, that's key. That's key. Keeping a log, keeping track of the things that happen to you over time so that you don't fall into that natural thing of self-gaslighting. When
Mhm.
everyone around you is telling you it's not a big deal, like you're making too big a deal out of it. Go back to the notes, go back to the voice notes, the things that happened in the moment so that you can see the pattern that emerges. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then you can take that and it equips you when, if
Yeah.
you're actually then just building on that skill of boundary setting with phrases, with, just working on vocalizing and that component and the right words to say and all of that, you like the foundational work is done. Because when we try to go in, and I know for myself too, again, being a very kind, very nice person, whatever, if I just sit up and practice some sayings in my head about boundary setting, but I don't know kind of how certain things are feeling in my body, and I haven't done that journaling and that reflection, like that's gonna fall flat when the moment presents itself. So
Yeah, that's key. That's key. Yeah. Because you can practice all you want, right? And then when you get in that moment, and like
mhm,
you said, those feelings that you may not be prepared for come up, like, oh, I feel the anger in my chest, like it's kind of throwing me off from my
mhm.
script. Yeah, so that's key to prepare for those too and check in with how you're feeling. Yeah. I did want to read some comments here. Thank y'all so much for commenting. Oscar Nod Wannabe says, I realized I had low self esteem when I couldn't fathom loving myself or seeing my own worth in the face of failure and perfection. Ooh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. I know a lot of us can relate to that. And thank you. Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is that we can build and repair our relationship with our self-esteem.
Can.
Mhm,
Yeah. We can. We can. Yeah, Soul Inspired says, my old jobs, people used to tell me I didn't belong in these spaces. They saw I
mhm.
had other skills just by how I carried myself and my interest. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. And Colette says, I found that people of all colors find it unimaginable that a Black woman would dare to assert her autonomy, let alone set boundaries. Colette, yes.
Yes,
It's almost like folks see us as public property. That's a word.
absolutely. Yes,
That's a
it is.
word.
Yes, it is.
And all of these things go
Whew.
right back to enslavement.
Mhm.
Yeah. Did you want to say anything about that, Ashley? Because, whoo,
Well, it brought back a very specific memory. So thank you, Colette.
yeah.
Just in terms of being one of very few Black women in this particular field, and telling a coworker that to not comment about my hair in group settings. And it was, again, it was done tactfully, it was done in private. And she took offense to that. And it just turned into this smear campaign and this attack against me. And it was just really awful. So that public property component, it's the entitlement, the dehumanization. It's very real, and we experience it every day in these workplaces. And some of the things that I had experienced in this last role, I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't have seen and heard some of those things directly. And not that I didn't believe that people were telling the truth,
Right.
but yeah. So.
Ooh, yeah. It's so confusing too, especially when you're the only one. I don't know what industry you worked in, but I was in the banking industry. And yeah, I was quite often the only one in these spaces. And that makes us a target for certain people, right? To come after us to talk about our hair, to try to touch our hair sometimes, like these very dehumanizing acts. When we are the only one, they see that as, ooh, an opportunity.
That's right.
That's, ooh,
And that's terrible. And what's equally
it
terrible, Marissa,
is.
is when we're not the only one in a space. And I know that's a
Yeah,
whole nother conversation. And
yeah,
when
yeah,
people that look like us are also contributing, I know that's another conversation for another day. But
yeah, that's real.
mhm.
That's real. Yeah. All right. Thank y'all so much. Jacqueline says, my burnout experience has helped to equip me to exercise healthy boundaries. I love that. I love that.
Hi, Jackie.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes it takes going through these experiences to realize that we do have the power to set boundaries. We
Mhm.
do have the power to be in healthy environments, right? Yeah. Okay, as we're wrapping up, first I want to thank you so much for sharing everything because the gems you dropped, seriously, I know they will help so many people, especially Black women who are going through burnout at the moment, going through surviving a toxic job, because that trauma is very real. So I just want to thank you for being here and sharing that. And I did want to ask you how people can continue to follow your journey online and also sign up for the self care planning session that's happening on November 4th.
Yes, Marissa, thank you again for your time and allowing me to share on your platform with your awesome subscribers. So you all can keep up with Courtney and I and Rest to Reset programming at resttoreset.org. And it's rest with the number 2, reset.org. And Marissa, thank you for posting the link to the self-care planning session. Also, I know
Yeah.
in the notes, from there, you can also find, let's see, resttoreset.org. And you can also connect with my YouTube page. Thank you. Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so awesome. I follow her as well. Like, that's so exciting to see her
Yes.
comment.
Marisha's
Yes.
everything. Yeah.
Yes. Hello. I was on her, it's like a Black Girl Creative Week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was
Yeah.
all in there. So that is
Me
so
too.
exciting. Thank you for hopping on. Yes. And you can, again, follow my YouTube to follow my own personal healing journey. But for the programming, resttoreset.org. And yeah, please, you're also welcome to join our mailing list so you can be the first to know. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I see a comment from here from Colette. We need to have Ashley back to talk about the other Black women. Yes, we do. Being implicit in the organizational assaults in the workplace. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation that we can get into. So,
Yes.
yes, I
Thank
would
you,
love to have
Colette.
you back.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And for using the word assault, because that's very accurate.
it is.
It's
It
harmful.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, y'all. I want to thank you so much for contributing your knowledge and expertise, as always, in the comments. I appreciated that. But yeah, please like this video if you liked it. If you're watching later, like and leave a comment. But thank you so much for being here. Yeah. And thank you, Ashley, again. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. All right. Thank you, Marissa.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye.